Special teams, special teams, special teams. This is arguably the most important stat for any NHL franchise looking to win a Stanley Cup. And unfortunately for the New York Rangers, their power play and penalty kill went dry at the worst possible time. Well, the Rangers are now eliminated from the playoffs and the Florida Panthers are moving on from the finals. And today this video is going to be focused on the Rangers, their season, why they were eliminated by the Panthers, and what the problem is going to be for them moving forward. Now, I was very big on the Rangers in this postseason. I thought that they were the team of destiny. They had all the right pieces to go on a deep playoff run and to win a Stanley Cup. And unfortunately, I think there's a lot of reasons why this team lost this series, and we're going to break that down today, as well as talk about some positives for the team moving forward. So let's just get the negatives out of the way. Rangers lose this series, and I think the biggest reason is their special teams. Through 5 games, the Rangers only had 1 goal on 14 power play opportunities, and that's just not going to get it done in any sort of playoff series. Their penalty kill was also pretty dreadful, as well as the Panthers really took advantage of every single penalty that the Rangers took. Sloppy plays, they didn't do the little things throughout this series, and that's a big reason why this team continued to get themselves into poor situations against the Panthers. But I think the big reason outside of the special teams that the Rangers really struggled in this series is the lack of star power performances from their top players. And we're going to go through 4 individuals who I think really ghosted against the Panthers. So let's start with their highest paid player, Artemi Panarin. Really didn't show up in the goals category, had a few assists, but wasn't really an impact player. When I watched every game, I hardly noticed Artemi Panarin, and I think this is less about him and more about the Florida Panthers forward group and how insane their forecheck is. Now, Panarin is a highly skilled and shifty player, but when you're playing against physical, ratty guys like Matthew Tkachuk, Sam Bennett, Carter Verhaeghe, these guys force you to play their style of hockey, taking you off your game and making you grip your stick just a little bit tighter than you probably would like. And it was very evident with Artemi Panarin in this series and kind of in past playoff series as well. People really chirped him last year for not showing up in that Devils series, and I feel like it's sort of the same story in this big time stage as well. Now, I know Panarin showed up in the previous 2 series, but when the lights were brightest, Panarin sort of became a ghost, and I think that that's a problem if he's your highest paid player on any roster. Now, another player I want to give some grievances to is Mika Zibanejad. Through the first 4 games, this guy didn't log a single point, and I've heard some people say that he's been dealing with a few injuries, but again, we don't know this at the time, so I'm assuming all of these players are healthy. Zibanejad, he's logging over 20 minutes of ice time a night, and he's a minus on most of these games. I mean, that's not good for one of your star offensive players. He only had 2 points across the first 5 games, and for a guy like Zibanejad, I think you need him to be going on the power play, considering that's where he got most of his goals during the regular season. Zibanejad and Panarin not showing up on both special teams and during 5v5 play is just a bad look for the Rangers and a big reason why they weren't getting a lot of goals in this series. The next guy I want to kind of chirp, I know Rangers fans might not be happy about this because he was such a big time player in that Carolina series, but it's Chris Kreider. I mean, the first 4 games, he also put up a big goose egg in both the goals and assist department. He also was playing around 20 minutes a game, not getting goals on the power play, and I know he did show up in game 5 getting that big goal, but outside of that, Kreider was pretty underwhelming during this series, and I think for a guy who was so impactful against Carolina, you were really hoping for that to carry over in this series, and it just didn't. Now, the last guy I really want to talk about is Adam Fox, and I've watched a lot of Rangers hockey in this postseason, and I just feel like this guy has been very unnoticeable. 0 impact really defensively. I haven't seen him make these like massive plays that would change a game. Offensively, he's supposed to be your driver from the blue line, and he's really done nothing outside of get a few assists. I know Adam Fox isn't going to be potting like 10 goals in the playoffs, but when you're seeing guys like Cale Makar or even Miro Heiskanen put up these big time numbers, also Evan Bouchard, I'm not going to leave him off this list, you're kind of hoping that your star stud defenseman is going to do the same for the Rangers, and he kind of just didn't really show up at all. Now, those were a few players who I felt negatively impact the Rangers in this Eastern Conference Finals, but there's a few players who I feel really took a stride forward, so let's give them their flowers before we continue with the rest of this video. First one, Igor Shesterkin. Shesterkin. In 15 games played during these playoffs, he has a .927 save percentage and a 2.36 goals against average. Now, there was a lot of doubts about Igor Shesterkin after his rocky start to the season, and entering the postseason, he has been lights out for the Rangers. And it's so disappointing that they weren't able to rally around him because he was playing the best hockey of his career. He did this back in the 2021-22 season, I believe, when they played the Lightning in the Eastern Conference Finals, and it's sort of the same situation. They get to that big stage, Igor's ready, he shows up, and the rest of the team just doesn't really follow. I mean, if you look at the Rangers right now, he's only lost 5 games in the postseason, and each time he loses, he's still putting up great numbers. It's very disappointing to see him playing his best hockey and the team not rally behind him. Even with him keeping almost every goal out of the net, they still couldn't help him out, and unfortunately, Igor gets bounced even with this great performance. The next player I really want to give some love to, it's Alexis Lafreniere, the guy who just at the start of the season everyone was calling a bust. But when it comes to the playoffs, man, has Laffy showed up this year. 15 games played, 8 goals, 6 assists, and 14 points. Now, he's a +1, which kind of speaks to the defense, but when he's playing like this offensively, I don't care what his plus-minus is. Watching Lafreniere in this series has been a huge positive sign for the Rangers. They now have a player who they drafted first overall, who's really coming into his own. He had a great regular season and continue that in this year's playoffs. I'm incredibly excited to watch him moving forward. And I think if you're a Rangers fan, this is the biggest positive you can take away from this series. One of your best drafted players is finally stepping up and coming into his own. Lafreniere was amazing in this series and deserves no discredit for what he did for this team. And the final player I want to give some flowers to, Barclay Goodrow. I mean, this guy was terrible during the regular season. I think he only had 4 goals. And in just 15 games in the playoffs, he has 8 points, 6 goals, and they were all big time. I mean, he's so impactful for this team. Every time I watch the Rangers, he's the one guy I notice the most, and I just really talk so badly about him all season long, but I guess he shows up in the biggest moment, which is where he deserves his flowers. Barclay Goodrow, Alexis Lafreniere, and Igor Shesterkin, those were the 3 players who I felt positively impacted this team, and unfortunately won't be moving on because of the poor performances from the rest of their teammates. So what's next for the New York Rangers? Well, positives to take away, Chris Kreider is proving that he's easily one of the best Rangers in the franchise's history. Adam Fox, he's still one of the best defensemen in the NHL. Alexis Lafreniere proving that he's going to be a stud in this league as he has a breakout season. Igor Shesterkin's going to be your goalie for the future, so you don't have to worry about your guys between the pipes, and you have a lot of core building blocks to move forward with. The only downsides for this team that I can see is that Artemi Panarin had the best year of his career, and you still couldn't get things done. He's getting older, and who knows how he's going to perform in the next few seasons. You also have a few contracts that are going to expire. A guy like Kaapo Kakko, who you should probably move on from considering he looks like he's going to be a bust. A lot of questions about this Rangers team, a lot of positives, a lot of negatives, but let me hear from you guys, Rangers Nation. How do you feel about your team? It's unfortunate that they're bounced this year, but do you feel like this was a step forward for this season and for this roster, or do you feel like this was supposed to be their window and they sort of missed their opportunity? Let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comments below. Comment about the Rangers, about the Panthers, and who you want to win in this finals matchup. Like this video, subscribe to the channel. I will see you guys in the next one.